Hi, I'm Beth Battolino, CEO of Healthy Women. Thank you for joining us today on Healthy Women's first talk show, WomenTalk. Hello, and welcome to WomenTalk. I'm Beth Battolino, CEO of Healthy Women, and your host of WomenTalk. In this episode, we're going to talk about all things Femtech. We'll explore the legal and the political developments surrounding the advancements of women's health and Femtech. And we're going to hear from Bethany Corbin, a Femtech attorney, entrepreneur, and podcast host on the latest Femtech news. Bethany founded the first law firm dedicated exclusively to advancing women's health, innovation, and Femtech policy. We'll also tell you about an exciting way Bethany and Healthy Women are teaming up to bring you the latest on Femtech policy trends and breaking news in women's digital health. Bethany, it's so great to have you on our show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Beth. I am so excited for the conversation.
So let's start with Femtech seems to be such a trendy word. Can you define what Femtech is?
Yes. So it's funny, right? Femtech has been around since about 2016 in terms of having a term that we can all unite around, but it still does not have a universally accepted definition. So that's probably why a lot of people have some confusion when they hear this term or may not have heard it at all. Femtech itself is short for female technology or female health technology, and it's used mainly to describe new and upcoming inventions in the women's health field. Now, there's differing opinions on whether or not Femtech is solely for digital health or whether it has a broader implication across healthcare innovations that use new technology, but maybe not in the digital sense. Whenever I'm thinking about Femtech, I'm defining it really close to the way that Ida Tin, who is really well known as the mother of Femtech, has defined it. And so that's specifically looking at products and services that leverage technology to address needs that are specific to people with female biology. So that is kind of the broadest definition and the one that I like to use. But it does have a lot of different and conflicting interpretations today, and there is still not a universal definition for it.
So I'm not crazy.
You're not crazy.
So what made you start the first law firm dedicated to advancing women's health innovation and Femtech policy?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you had asked me when I came out of law school what I was going to do with my career, I would never have even thought about Femtech, and largely because the term wasn't even invented when I came out of law school, not to totally date myself here. But when I came out, I was actually in litigation and financial services, so something completely different. And I had been involved in the healthcare field, gosh, since I was about 8 years old. My mom actually had an illness that was very rare. And as a result, doctors couldn't figure out what it was. And so, like many other women, they continued to tell my mom that all of her symptoms were in her head, even when she would fall down and not be able to move any of her body parts and not even be able to talk. And so we went through a period of about 8 to 10 years of not having a diagnosis and interacting with the healthcare system. And so whenever I was in financial services and litigation, I thought, wow, this is not, in my opinion, for what I want to do with my life, making a difference. And so I ended up switching my career path and going into healthcare law. I got my LLM in healthcare, went to large law firms in Washington, D.C. and worked there, and very unexpectedly had my own women's health issue. And it was kind of a full circle moment where, like my mother, I ended up at Mayo Clinic, and it turned out that I had very large fibroids that were actually crushing my internal organs. So it was to the point where these things made me look like I was about the equivalent of 6 months pregnant.
Wow.
So I ended up having a really lengthy surgery, and during that time, I had my own pain dismissed by a male doctor. And whenever I was going through that process, it was, of course, the height of COVID, and new digital tools were coming out. And I was so thankful for all of the remote appointments that I was able to get. And I actually had an appointment with one of the key doctors who had written the fibroid book 30 plus years ago. And when I was talking to her about my case, and I said, great, what are the new inventions that are out there? She really looked at me and said, you know what, there hasn't been a lot of movement in terms of how we're treating fibroids. There's maybe one or two new developments, but it's still a painful procedure, right? It's going to be a tough journey, and we still don't know what causes it, and they're going to come back. And I just thought as I was going through my recovery that if 80% of men were going to have tumors on their reproductive organs, we would have a pill, we would know what caused it, and it would be a very non invasive solution. And so that was what really started my journey into femtech and dedicating my career to this space. I went and worked at some smaller law firms that were focused on digital health innovation specifically. And I learned a lot of fantastic material there. But what I continued to see were that usually the women's health innovators were on the earlier side of the startup field and they didn't have a lot of money to spend on their legal help. And as a result, we would often turn them away because they didn't have the budget for legal services. They'd come back a year or two later, say, great, I'm ready to engage. And I'd look at what they'd done and I say, okay, but here's 10 things you did wrong in the interim, and now it's going to cost double. And I absolutely hated that. And I thought this is a key barrier that we have in women's digital health innovation and femtech. So as a result, I ended up taking a step back and forming my own law firm that focuses exclusively on helping these early stage innovators get the support they need at the prices that they're able to pay so that we can start to move women's digital health innovation along and get it to the point where we're starting to see more and more unicorns and more companies coming out that can make a measurable difference.
You know, that is such a powerful story. And I'm so sorry that your mom had to go through her journey, but so thankful that you were there to help her. And then just hearing your own journey, um, you know, it really did. It seems like it was really that aha moment for you of, I need to do something different. And you are doing something that's so different and so needed. And which when I first talked to you or met you, I was just love. I just think what you're doing and how you're doing it is so phenomenal. Um,
Thank
and
you.
and when I think about what you're doing from a legal perspective and being able to provide the the guidance to these companies that don't have big budgets, that's exactly kind of where I came from too. When I was thinking, I went to a couple conferences and I've listened to, I've met some unbelievable people that are doing such great work in innovation and technology and trying to bring new options in women's health in healthcare to market, but they don't have the big budgets like some of these, our bigger pharmaceutical companies have. But
Yeah,
they do need a seat at the table. And I said, one area that we can provide is room at the table. And consumers need to know about it, right? So we need to make sure consumers are educated, and then I know we could do probably another program on access issues, right? Because that's still going to be a huge hurdle that is really hurting some of the innovation and technology companies in bringing their products to market. But we, here at Healthy Women, we do want to raise awareness. We do want the great scientists, the CEOs of these companies to be heard, and we want them to share the information about their new products and their new innovations with the consumer market. So we're here to educate, and I know I'm super excited about our team effort here, launching the new Femtech newsletter to bring women the latest Femtech news in digestible skim bites. Why is it important for women to know about cutting edge I was going to say innovation? Like why, for you from where you sit, why is it so important?
Yeah, it's hugely important for several reasons. One of the first is women's health has been so neglected when we think about the traditional healthcare system and we think about, how women's bodies are typically seen as, different than men and only differing in terms of reproductive organs. That's kind of been the standard perception of healthcare. And as a result, what's happened is a lot of the solutions that have been developed have the male body as the baseline. And so they either don't work as well for women or they completely miss symptoms or diseases that women are having. And it takes, on average, for some of these women's health conditions like endometriosis, 7 to 10 years to diagnose because we haven't had that focus on women's health. We haven't had historically a lot of innovations that have been focused on women's health care. And as a result, we know significantly less about the female body. And so when we think about that, and we also think about, the policy of a lot of women being excluded from clinical trials until 1993, and even then it wasn't until the mid 2000s that the NIH required, sex-based variables to be looked at. So when we think about that, and we think about the data sets that we have on women's health, it's really not surprising that it's taking up to 10 years to get a diagnosis for a lot of common illnesses that women have. And so in terms of, why women need to know about innovation, a lot of the innovation that's coming out is really reflective of the fact that we have been, so disadvantaged in the healthcare system to date and the need to do better. A lot of these solutions come from female founders who have experienced similar problems to what a lot of other women are going through, and they're trying to make a difference in a healthcare system that's historically neglected them. So the problem is, though, if women don't know about these solutions, they can't access them, they can't try them, and then they can't see if this is something that's going to work for them and also help build the data sets that we need on women's healthcare for the future. And I'll tell you, one of the key issues that we have in terms of getting these products in front of consumers for them to even know about it is censorship. And so a lot of these femtech companies you've probably not heard of because they're trying to do advertisements, right? Instagram, Meta, Google, and a lot of those advertisements are getting blocked or banned because they concern women's health. And so you might have an ad that says it takes 7 to 10 years to get an endometriosis diagnosis, and that's blocked. But you might have an ad about erectile dysfunction that's very explicit that gets approved. And so as a result, women actually aren't getting this knowledge about the innovations that are out there. And so they don't even know that this whole industry exists. And there was actually a study that showed that about 86% of consumers have never even heard the term femtech, despite the fact that it's an industry developed to aid and really help 50% plus of the world's population. So really, if we don't know about the innovations, we can't take advantage of them. We can't build the data sets. And further, we're not going to get future funding for innovations if we're not voting with our dollars to show that these are the innovations and the products that we need to take care of our own health. So that's kind of the high level of really why it's important for consumers to know about this, and really understand that, as well, there's a lot of empowerment and agency that comes in with being able to track and monitor your health through these devices in a way that we also haven't had before. And so consumers miss out on that as well if they don't know about the innovations. There was actually an interesting story too about individuals who hadn't known about innovations. So there was one story that I'm really excited to share. There was an individual who had endometriosis, and so she went through her whole journey. Right, she did all of this research. She found communities, and it was the height of the COVID pandemic, and she had to get a surgery, to get the endometriosis removed. And because it was COVID, elective surgeries were being canceled,
Right.
and her doctors essentially told her that this was an elective surgery. She was actually able to use a new endometriosis app that had come out onto the market to track her symptoms and to track all of the different issues that she was having with her health, and used that data to get her surgery approved and classified as necessary during COVID. So that's kind of one example really of how these apps and innovations can help you as a consumer to even advocate for the care that you need.
I love that, and I just feel, this is what excites me so much is because we're gonna be working together to make a change, right? Through
Yes.
education, through all the great work that you're doing with these companies, and pulling through those real women and the real stories, which are so powerful. And so kudos for that woman and being able to
Yes.
find, and kudos to the company who created the endometriosis app. And I can't believe in 2024 that we're still saying 7 to 10 years. It just drives
Yes.
me crazy because I can remember like 10 years ago, we were still using that same stat. And shame on
Yes.
yeah, it's just it's shameful. But we are going to make a difference. I feel it, and I love the fact that you're actually doing a Fem Health Festival in 2025. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So really, one of our key pillars at Feminovation and what we're working on is making sure that we are getting consumers involved in the femtech industry. Because as we just talked about, right, if you
Yeah.
don't know about it, you can't benefit from it. And yet most consumers don't know about these products, or they don't even know how to vet them, right? How do you determine which period tracking app, right? Which fertility tracker? And so what we have as part of our mission is really making sure that consumers understand this tech and know how to use it safely. So we have developed for 2025 the first Fem Health Festival that really focuses on consumers. We hope it will grow into being the largest consumer focused women's health festival that's out there. And the goal is, because right now a lot of conferences and events are more on the B2B side and they're not accessible to consumers. And this is really hoping to be one of those first events that draws consumers in, but does it in a way where we're breaking down barriers to the discussion of women's healthcare, in addition to educating about the new innovations that are out there. So we're really hoping to do that with celebrity performers, athletes, different types of celebrity panels as well, so that we can get consumers to understand, right, that these are topics we have to talk about in order to progress our own healthcare. And then we're hoping to have a lot of new femtech innovators and other women's health innovators there to showcase their products, get consumers familiar with some of these companies that are out there that could help them, and then also have a platform after the fact where consumers can go and find all of these great products without worrying about censorship. And so, our goals with that festival really are not only to help drive awareness and educate consumers, but to also help to drive some of the funding into the femtech field, because right now a lot of it is driven by venture-backed capitalists. And what's happening there is they're still seeing femtech as a niche industry and women's health as, a very small market, despite the fact that it has trillions of dollars of potential. And so if we can get consumers to understand the market and vote with their dollars, we can help investors to see the potential for this industry, get more funding, get more products out there, and really hopefully revolutionize women's healthcare. And then we're also hoping to be able to build some of those data sets that we need on women's health through that festival as well.
Oh my gosh, I'm count us in. We are going to be there to support and promote, and hopefully be on site. Where's it going to? Do you have any idea where it's going to be? Are you going to be East Coast, West Coast, Central? What are you thinking?
Yeah. So right now we're looking at the San Francisco Bay Area,
Okay,
targeting fall 2025. We're waiting to solidify our celebrity and talent first in the venue, and then we'll have a specific location and date. But we're looking kind of at the October timeframe for 2025.
awesome. I'm going to definitely put it on our calendar, and would love to work with you on making sure that we can promote this out to the consumer audience. So,
We would love
congratulations, Bethany. I just like
to.
I feel like we met like a year ago, and just look at everything that you've done in this short time. Like 2024 just flew by, but I'm
It
just so
did.
super proud of you, and I love the fact that you're moving this forward, and I'm super excited about our newsletter collaboration, and super super excited about the conference that's coming up, the festival. I want to say festival because that's definitely more attractive to consumers than conference, right? Yeah,
Right,
the
right,
festival.
exactly.
Yeah, no, it's going to be awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. And are there any other women's health initiatives that you'd like our audience to know about that's kind of top of mind right now?
Yeah, there are a couple. So for those who are interested in kind of moving the needle when it comes to policy, there's a couple of initiatives there. The first is G2G Consulting has their women's health initiative that they do. It's an easy, kind of free event to be part of and kind of get and stay up to date on those new policy in legislation, all of that is coming through the pipeline that could impact women's health. For those who want to take a more active role in helping to shape, some of the key barriers to women's healthcare and getting those removed at the policy level, the Women's Digital Health Network is a great resource for that. They're currently forming their strategic plan for 2025 and getting in front of Congress and regulatory agencies on issues like FDA approval, data privacy, CMS reimbursement. So if you're interested in that, Women's Digital Health Network is great there. And then as well, there's actually, for those who are interested in breast cancer, a new early detection breast cancer coalition that's forming. So that's another one that's just really top of mind that's also new.
No, that's super exciting. And we'll make sure we put those resources on healthywomen.org, and we'll make sure that we shout them out too in our social, because I do think the more that we continue to push this out and make consumers realize that their voice matters, and that we're putting it together so that if they don't know about digital health, they can learn about digital health. If they don't know about policies that affect her health, we're going to hold your hand and teach you what you want to learn about women's health policies. I just love, I feel like women's health, we're all coming together just to hold each other's hands and to make sure that we're providing her with what she needs in the way that she wants to receive it, which is super important. Thank you again, Bethany, for taking, I know how busy you are, so I so appreciate you and your time today. And I am super excited about the newsletter, your festival, and I just want to say thank you for watching the 411 on Femtech. For more information on Femtech and all things women's health, please visit healthywomen.org and tune in here for the next episode of Women Talk.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Women Talk. Stay tuned for more Healthy Women Live events at www.healthywomen.org. You can also follow us at Healthy Women on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or LinkedIn, or follow us on Instagram at healthywomen.org. We'll see you next time.